I'm Zach. That's pointing the wrong way on my screen. That's Odin. Odin is at Christ Community Church. What, 6 weeks, 2 months,
About 6 weeks now.
six
Yeah.
weeks
So officially
doing
started October 1st. So
doing youth ministry. Odin, tell everybody how you ended up there.
yeah. Uh my wife and my wife's name is Emily Funkhouser. She is actually a native of Sheboygan. She lived 2 blocks away from this church. But so for the longest time, about like not really the longest time, but like 2 months, my wife and I felt called elsewhere outside of the home church we were at. Um, and I was being called to do full-time ministry. And so I had a bunch of interviews, a bunch of out-of-state interviews. We actually went on a trip out of state for a job, which seemed very likely that we were going to get, but then something else popped up. But anyways, we were just kind of coasting around, trying to figure out where God wanted us. And um, at the same time, we were both growing in our marriage. We've only been married for like a month at this time. We got married in June of 2023. So we've only like been married 5 months now. But anyways, we're looking all over the place. I think I did like 11 interviews. And it got to the point where I had a couple out of state jobs lined up. And then my mother-in-law was walking, and a member from this church approached her while she was out walking in Sheboygan and said, "Oh, I heard your son-in-law is looking for a job, a youth ministry job, a ministry job. And our church has been looking for one for 2 years, someone to be the director of youth and family." And she was like, "Oh, I'm going to tell him right away." So she hit up my wife, and then Emily got me the link from Christ Community Church's Facebook page, sent it to me, sent in my resume, did an interview a week later, then a second interview, then I taught a youth group, got to meet the kids a little bit, went to a service, and then we accepted the job end of September. So I think it was September 28th. We officially got the letter and everything. So yeah, we're really grateful to be here. Definitely is a humbling experience. But there's been so much change, so much God's been doing in our lives, growing ourselves individually, growing us closer as a couple, that this is just like another cool chapter of our lives to walk into. So that's how we got here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's
Okay.
awesome.
Couple of follow-ups. You said this is a humbling
Yeah.
experience. How so?
Mhm. Humbling in the fact that like I can't believe I have a full-time ministry job at my age. It's like a huge blessing to me, because it's been something I've wanted to do for so long. And for so long, for the last 2, 3 years, I always felt so unequipped to do ministry at my age, without any school experience, without any education, formal education. So I always would beat myself up about it. And to have this opportunity here, where God's opened the door, is just really, really cool. It's a blessing. Yeah.
You also said felt called to full-time ministry.
Yep.
And then you kept talking, and I imagine there's a lot of people who discerning a calling from God is much more complicated and difficult. So just talk about what that means to have to. Where did that call come from? How did you know?
Yeah.
How did you know it was
Yeah.
from God?
So,
Talk about
so
that calling a little bit.
yeah, for sure. For sure. So I feel like God's given us all gifts and abilities, right? And he's prepared the way for us to use those gifts and abilities to best glorify him, right? And so for the
Let
longest
me stop you
time,
there. What gifts and abilities do you have that jive with youth ministry?
I think just very personable, very relational. I would say that I have pretty good leadership skills to just manage the kids, manage the youth, manage that classroom type atmosphere, and be authentic, in the sense where I can be bold with kids, because you got to kind of be approachable to them. You got to confront them with things. You got to get out there a little bit, which in the church we're a little scared to do that nowadays. So
And I know
yeah,
from having met you a little bit that you have a experience and a desire to see youth in Bible studies,
yep,
and some of that discipleship in the Word that you've done
yep,
before and
yeah,
are good at, right? You've had
yeah,
success in those things. So not to make you brag, but anyways, keep going with calling. We all have gifts and
yeah, for
abilities.
sure. Yep. So we all have giftings and abilities, and God's given us those to steward for His glory. And I feel like when you identify these giftings, when you're in your sweet spot per se, that's when you can kind of discern like what he's calling you to do, to use those gifts to glorify him. Like, so for an example, for me, it was about when I was 16, 17 years old. My younger brother, Jonah Funkhouser, we felt like prompt to start a Bible study. We were in high school at the time. We had a lot of kids coming up to us. Like, God was opening the doors. Kids were coming to us, asking us questions about our faith, right? And we were very immature in our faith. We weren't as mature as we are now. But kids were coming up, asking questions about the gospel, asking who Jesus is. Can I be a Christian if I'm doing this? Can I do this and this? So we were like, you know what? Let's just start a Bible study. Let's do it in the afternoon after practice one day at like 6 o'clock. And so that went on for about 2.5 years. And through that time, God kind of just illuminated the fact that, man, I'm called to do ministry. Like, this is a sweet spot for me. That doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean it was simple.
Oh, right.
But he's given me the tools and abilities he's equipped me for what he's prepared before me. You know what I mean? So he's prepared this ministry from the get-go, and he's equipping me through it. And I'm finally seeing that while doing ministry with my brother, with these kids. And in those moments, in those nights and in the weekends, things we did, and also serving at my church too, more and more, I was just being prompt to, hey, you can do ministry. God's going to prepare the way for you. He always will prepare and equip you for what he's calling you to do, And it took a lot of people, it took a lot of counsel, it took a lot of me getting out of my comfort zone, trying things, failing things, trying to do things my own way instead of God's way, to kind of identify that call. And we're never going to be 100% sure all the time. That's where faith comes in, right? Faith is having a belief and then acting on that belief, And so that's definitely how I figured out that was what God was calling me to do, And Pastor Stephen Maris at a local church in Sheboygan Falls, Word of Grace, really helped me identify that, along with a fellow by the name of Bill Foley, kind of took me under his wing, discipled me. So a bunch of people, my dad, Dave Funkhouser, all these people kind of just helped me identify this calling of mine. So yeah.
You would say, discerning your calling is kind of the intersect of personal gifts and interests, other people recognizing it in you.
Yep.
So you've got these students coming up to you at school saying, you're kind of the guy I need to go to with these questions. And, Pastor Stephen and others who said, we want you to help that Word of Grace.
Yeah.
So personal gifts and interests, other people recognizing those gifts and interests, and then third, godly opportunity, right? Provision. Job. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you have any moments? You mentioned 11 interviews. Did Christ Community make 12?
Christ Community Church made 12. Yeah.
That's a good biblical number.
It's a good biblical number.
Did you have any point along there where you were maybe discouraged or questioning your calling? Because 12 interviews is not like I have this calling. Oh, door opened. Next day I start it. 12 interviews is a long process and a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have kind of doubts and discouragements?
Yep. Yeah. So I'd say right after that, I got pretty discouraged and I got really impatient. I think that's where a lot of my discouragement was coming from. When we aren't patient and we put more of the emphasis on our works and what we can do, from that kind of came discouragement in my life. And I was kind of convicted about it when my wife brought it up to me. She's like, it's only been a month. You've only been looking for a month. A lot of the reasons this isn't working out isn't necessarily you. And you just have to trust that this is God's plan for our life. And it didn't help at the time. My wife was going through some health problems. Nothing we could control. We just were looking for answers with her, which I don't need to get into that right now, but that kind of did have a part in that as well. Yeah. So that was a little frustrating for me. Yeah. So then I got to a point where I was like, man, I'm just kind of, should I even be looking now? Is this like a call for down the road? And I just need to buckle up and get a 9-to-5 job, because I want something. I'm getting impatient. Yeah. But that's really, it was discouraging for a time. Yeah. But then there was a lot of growth that happened after that. So. Yeah.
And I affirm that desire you had, though, to be a provider for your wife. That's godly and good. And I'm glad that, on the other side of this, we can recognize God's hand in the process. It's wonderful. Tell me, it's only been 6 weeks, but tell me about your work so far at Christ Community Church. What's going on at church? What are you spending time doing?
Yeah. So it's been great. I mean, right now I think it's just trying to be relational with not only elders, Pastor Josh, also Josh Aschenbach, the worship leader who's on there, who did an interview with last week.
That's right.
And then also with the kids. Like last night, we had a couple kids over, played a bunch of random games for 3 hours, just play some Wii. So really right now I'm just trying to be relational, be present in the church, be present at school, whether it's the state soccer game or in the hallways or out in the community, that's important to me. As you were saying earlier, Zach, our job isn't just to be buried in the Bible, in the desk, in a room, we're supposed to be out fulfilling that great commission, make disciples.
About an unpopular opinion I've had for a long time that I don't always share with people, but I'm willing to share for the sake of the
You're sharing it now.
I think pastors are overread often, especially in our circles, which is, I'll admit, an excuse because I don't love to read. So that's part of it. I do read for my job, but I don't love it.
Okay, yeah.
But we spend way too much time reading books and not enough time with people. And ministry is I don't mean to be reductive, but ministry is about people.
Yep.
Anyways, so you guys can revoke my commissioned pastor license or whatever you want to do, but
but no, you're right. It is about people, right? Our God is a God of relationships, right? He initiated them with us, and we are to do the same, especially as leaders in a church, whether bivocational or vocational. We are to be relational in our lives, in our ministry, right? We're supposed to initiate relationships with other people, evangelism, all that stuff. That also falls in line with kids, especially with youth. We can't put our trust in curriculum and events in an entertaining sermon, right? We're supposed to trust in the Lord. He's given us enough to act on already. So that's really my goal right now. It's just being relational with everyone, getting trust, getting credibility, Yeah. So it's been great.
Yeah. I talked to, Josh a little bit about this also at Christ Community Church in the last episode. But just talk about what's been unique or different at Christ Community Church than growing up.
Yeah, I say for me, it's just been how welcoming and authentic everyone is. From the beginning of the interview process, whether I got the job or not, people were giving me books and resources to just further myself in youth ministry as a leader, as a man of God, willing to meet at weird times to talk, to give more information about the church. And after moving in with my wife to our house here in Sheboygan, everyone's been more than welcome to help us with what we need help with, to be there for us, to make dinner for us, to give us a meal. And even on Sundays, they've made themselves known to us instead of us feeling like we're not part of the church yet or can't get into this church family, So definitely it's been welcoming and authentic, very engaging as a church, which is really cool. So there's something special about that here at this church. So that's awesome.
I agree. Christ Community Church is a great place. Anyway, we can pray for you or Emily or the church before we close? Yeah,
so I'd say just continued patience and wisdom for myself as I steward this ministry that God's given me, and then just prayers for my wife as she looks to continue her schooling in January. So looking to be a teacher. So awesome. Yeah, awesome, Zach. Yes, you would.
Yeah. Well, we'll be praying for you guys and your church.
Awesome.
And I'll see you in a little bit.
Awesome. See you, man. Right. Thank you.